In 1953, as someone who knows the lake and Gorny Altai as a whole, I was invited to work at the tourist base on Lake Telexy, where I had to head the instructor service of mountain hiking and water tourism for many years. These were the years when, as they officially said, Soviet Massachusetts tourism was developing at full speed, and Altai, with its enchanting beauty, as always, was a tempting goal for those who liked to visit distant wild lands and make a trip surrounded by wildlife. In a word, a stream of tourists literally poured into Altai in the post-war years. There were developed and open tourist routes of various categories of difficulty, available for people of different ages and different physical fitness. The routes covered the most interesting places in Gorny Altai and gave a complete picture of this amazing region of Russia. Interesting not only from the point of view of extraordinary beauty, but also from the point of view of history, geography, vegetation, development, settlement, etc. Finishing a trip to Altai, tourists, leaving home, assured that such places spiritually enrich everyone who has visited here. And indeed it is. Did our ancestors, leaving Russia for Siberia, Altai in search of fertile places, understand all this? Understood. Of course, not like us, but no less than us, if not more. And they chose places for residence not only convenient for conducting a versatile economy, but also attractive from the point of view of beauty and, as they said, lordly places, that is, beautiful. I remember how one day, spending the night in the taiga on the banks of the Abokan, talking in a calm atmosphere by the fire about moving to the taiga wilderness, one of the old believers said, speaking about the beauty of these places. What kind of grace pleases the soul and life is easier. How else could you say better? So much for the concept of true Russian peasants about spirituality and love of nature. In addition to the so-called planned tourists, Altai was visited by hundreds of amateur groups from many cities of the Union. These were mainly student groups, well prepared, with developed and documented routes approved by the qualification commissions of their clubs. The bulk of such groups came from Moscow, Leningrad, Kiev, Bayanul, Novosibirsk and other cities where tourist clubs operated and organizational training was well organized. Most of the groups passing through the area of Lake Telexy came to the campsite in order to make a mark in the itinerary documents and get advice, if required. Therefore, the management of the campsite knew about the movement of many groups, knew when they left and how the route of this group would pass. These groups traveled across Gorny Altai up and down. Many groups went to the western sides and, having crossed the Abokan Ridge, went down the Abokan River. But the headwaters of this river have always remained on the sidelines. This difficult, inaccessible area was visited extremely rarely, but many of them came to the campsite to receive advice. During the consultations, tourists often asked questions whether there was a Lykovs capture, why there are several of them on the map, who is Lykov, etc. As I already wrote, all topographic maps were marked with Lykovs capture, and, of course, they were interested in the landmarks indicated on the maps as points where one could make a stop in a day. While consulting the groups leaving for the upper reaches of the Abokan, I always drew their attention to the fact that the Lykov family lives somewhere there, and if they have to see traces of a person there, then these are traces of one of them. No one else is there. In 1958, the Moscow City Tourist Club, where he worked for a long time as the director of Zlatsin, widely known in tourist circles, a great connoisseur of tourism in the USSR, organized a meeting of managers of complex tourist trips. Altai, Lake Telexy was chosen as the gathering place. From here, several groups were supposed to go on the routes and, having passed through the most difficult places of the lake basin and the western Sion Mountains, return to Lake Telexy. The training camp was headed by my old friend, Master of Sports in Tourism Yuri Alexandrovich Sturmer. It was he who led the group along the most difficult route. After they passed through the Abokan Ridge, they had to go down to the Abokan River and go to the upper reaches by its valley, climb the Abokan Ridge and, having crossed it again, by the Chulchi and Chulishman valleys, go to Lake Telexy. While analyzing the route, we talked in detail about those places, about the nature of the terrain, and when I marked on the map where the Lykovs house is located on Aranet, the conversation turned to them. I asked Yuri to pay attention to possible traces of a person, to fences on the river, and if fate suddenly brings him to the Lykovs, then I asked him to find out everything possible about them, where are the children, whether he brought them out, as promised, or they still live together. Upon returning from the route, the first thing Sturm were told about was that they were lucky enough to meet with the Lykovs. In the very upper reaches of the Abakan, a little lower than the confluence of the Aranet River, they, coming out of the Tega to the bank of the Abakan, quite unexpectedly saw a man with a rod in his hands. He was fishing, and a slender elderly woman was sitting next to him on a heap of grass and fir leaves. It was the Lykov couple. Both were wearing homespun clothing. The group stopped for a halt. We prepared dinner and invited the Lykovs to dine. They categorically refused everything, took only salt. While talking, Yuri asked about the children. Where are they? Are they alive? Karp answered. The children, thank God, are alive. Where are they? Yuri asked and got the following answer: who are with us, who have departed. It was not entirely clear, and Yuri said that one of them, apparently, changed their place of residence. Later it became clear Karp separated his sons into a built hut kilometers from his house. I asked how they looked, whether they were healthy, etc. Yuri said that Karp looks good, dense, strong, in a word, like a lump, but Akulina Karpovna is thin, in which only the soul is kept, apparently, painful, in a word, living relics. While analyzing the route, we talked in detail about those places, about the nature of the terrain, and when I marked on the map where the Lykovs' house is located on Aranet, the conversation turned to them. I asked Yuri to pay attention to possible traces of a person, to fences on the river, and if fate suddenly brings him to the Lykovs, then I asked him to find out everything possible about them. Where are the children, whether he brought them out, as promised, or they still live together. Upon returning from the route, the first thing Sturm were told about was that they were lucky enough to meet with the Lykovs. In the very upper reaches of the Abakan, a little lower than the confluence of the Aranet River, they, coming out of the Tega to the bank of the Abakan, quite unexpectedly saw a man with a rod in his hands. He was fishing, and a slender elderly woman was sitting next to him on a heap of grass and fir leaves. It was the Lykov couple. Both were wearing homespun clothing. The group stopped for a halt. We prepared dinner and invited the Lykovs to dine. They categorically refused everything, took only salt. While talking, Yuri asked about the children. Where are they? Are they alive? Karp answered. The children, thank God, are alive. Where are they? Yuri asked and got the following answer: who are with us, who have departed. It was not entirely clear, and Yuri said that one of them, apparently, changed their place of residence. Later it became clear Karp separated his sons into a built hut kilometers from his house. I asked how they looked, whether they were healthy, etc. Yuri said that Karp looks good, dense, strong, in a word, like a lump, but Akulina Karpovna is thin, in which only the soul is kept, apparently, painful, in a word, living relics. And the head of the topographic detachment, Lieutenant Berezhkov, returning, indicated this event in the report: there are children in the family. 2 are already adults. The head of the family, seeing the shoulder straps, decided that the Tsarist power had returned, began to pray and tried to kiss my boots. This report, naturally under the USSR, was not advertised. In 1946, another detachment of the NKVD went on a campaign to force the return of the Lykov family and to try Karp for not participating in the war. For 17 days, guides and security officers wandered in aimless searches. And the Lykovs went even further, not even leaving a trace in the snow. In 1978, geologists from a helicopter spotted them again. But Lykov already understood that times had changed and the operatives were no longer interested in them. Therefore willingly contacted the world, although completely in vain. By the time geologists discovered Tega inhabitants, there were 5, the head of the family Karp Lykov, sons Savin, 45 years old, Dmitry, 36 years old, and daughters Natalia, 42 years old, and Agafia, 34 years old. Since the Lykovs in isolation did not acquire such immunity as people who lived in society, they became infected and died. In 1981, 3 of the children died one after another: Savin, Dmitry and Natalia, and in 1988 the Lykovs' father passed away. Agafia has been living as a hermit since 1988. Please share this video on your social networks, using the buttons under the video, and subscribe to the channel. I ask you to go and watch other videos about Agafia Lykova, which you can see now on the screen in the end screensavers. There are a lot of rare and interesting facts about the Hermit. Thank you all for watching.